All right. So this is it, John. Take one, and no other takes allowed. One and only take here for inaugural. I don't know what I'll call this. So, John, thanks for joining. I thought it'd be good since I've been working on helping organizations, people with ALMs. I thought it'd be great for you not to talk about it, your journey using ChatGPT. So that's kind of, it'd be great. Thanks for joining.
Yeah, cool.
We'll see what happens after this one. We'll do more than one. Maybe the John and Arthur show going forward, who knows, or our friends. Um, but again, the purpose of this kind of session or conversation is about your journey with ChatGPT, and we'll get into why you're using it more recently. Before we get to John, why don't you just talk a little bit about yourself?
Uh, Thanks for having me on, Arthur. John Feliciano. So I've been in information technology now for over 15 years. Started out doing tech support over the phone, customer facing, then got into business and application analysis, configuring off the shelf CRM and CMS systems. And then had the opportunity to transition to product ownership when one of the companies I was working with decided to build a replacement custom solution for a product they were using that was being sunset. So, and transitioning into product ownership, I've been doing that for the last 10 or 11 years. And I found myself at Avid Technology for the last 3 years, which was kind of like a dream job for me, being in media and music technology. So that was a great experience. Unfortunately, was part of the one round of layoffs last August. So since then, I've been on the job hunt, applying to multiple jobs per week, and not to get ahead, but that was kind of my avenue into AI, LLMs, and Chat GPT specifically.
And just so everyone understands here. So, John, we worked together at a previous company. I hired you to be a product owner, and we've been in contact, and that's sort of how we kind of connected about this. And John's a fantastic product owner, but that's a totally different conversation. It's happy to we could, if you have time, go into that as well. Very interesting experiences at our last company that we worked together for sure. So John, you talked about a bit of your roles here. So, and you kind of in your job search currently.
I am. Yes.
Yeah. So let's talk about your journey here. So you talk about initially, how did you approach your job search essentially?
So initially, slowly and methodical. I think, I'd been employed consistently over that 15-year period, 20 year period, like I said. So, in the past, applying to jobs was a lot more like slow, targeted, methodical. Maybe I'm applying to one job per month, something, only a jobs that like specifically interest me because I'm already working in a company. I'm gainfully employed and I'm just looking for, other opportunities. Whereas I would say the biggest difference coming into this search was, or the surprise for me was how much volume I was going to have to be, uh, how many applications I was going to have to be getting to make any kind of progress in this search.
Um, Before I get into like the volume aspect of
Yeah.
it, because similar to me, like last year, I got laid off. I'm just kind of semi-retired now. I'm a little bit older than you, just so we're not going to age. So for me, meaning like, because I was like you, when after I graduated Boston College, I was like gainfully employed until last year. Like literally, there was like no breaks.
Yep.
Um, and for me personally, the first month was okay. Like it was relaxing. Oh, it's going to happen. I kind of knew it was going to happen. And so I had my mind in it. Um, and in terms of like, I understood what's happening. But I have to say, like the next 2 months after the first month, it was a little bit, even though I knew I was going to like what my intention was to go back to work. Uh, it was a little, there was a transition. I don't know how to describe it. It was different.
Yeah.
I think part of what I want to kind of bridge into what you're saying about like, because I was gainfully employed. Like I was always had this routine. I had a thing. I had
Right.
people. I like, going to the office at that time. We always went to the office.
Right.
So it was a big mind shift change for me. I think I've settled in a little bit. Um, doing this consulting gigs. Like, how's your mind shift going from what you had to kind of getting into the flow, essentially?
Yeah, well, I think it was a big change from my experience, like similar to what you were saying. I think there had been some layoffs and reduction in force already. So I had been kind of testing the waters a little bit using the old way. You're applying to really finite number of jobs. So you have the time to take to write that dedicated cover letter. And I think, like you said, maybe for the first month, I'd applied to like one or two. And then coming into it, I tried to keep an eye on the market using LinkedIn, seeing what people were saying about the market. So I had heard and read some things that this job search in this market was going to require a lot of applications. So I think the question in my mind was, knowing how I worked previously applying to jobs, is how am I going to do that? Balancing this transition, family time. Like, I think the biggest, I don't want to say fear, but like question mark for me was like, how am I going to do this in this market and what's needed to kind of break through with all these job applications?
Yeah, part of the, you have a family, when I go into particulars here, you know, even when that event happens, you have things to do, right?
Right.
And
Yeah,
you have
absolutely.
younger kids, have older kids, but well, you still have responsibilities.
Yeah.
So you're looking for edge and productivity gains, even then, right?
Even there.
I think to your point, the job market is different. Like, I haven't actively looked for a job, but my sense just, you know, on social media, talking to people, it's a different market than it was 10, 15 years ago. From a high tech, like in our field, which is
Right.
high tech, I do feel it's different essentially. It's just been a shift. So you were applying slowly to a couple of jobs. You knew now you need to apply to more jobs. Like, what happened? Meaning, like, oh, I gotta apply to more jobs. Was that easy, hard? And then maybe talk a little about when you and I were talking, like,
Yeah.
thinking about using something like Chat GPT.
I think the approach was I felt comfortable in revising my resume, getting it to a point where I feel it was going to be more universally acceptable to the jobs I was applying for. So I didn't feel like that was something I needed to customize entirely every time I was applying. The big hurdle was going to be cover letters. And I know there's debate on whether cover letters should be asked, used and whatnot. But all the applications I was submitting required a cover letter. And I think I quickly realized, at least the way that I write cover letters, that was going to be a huge time commitment. I realized even just try to do one or two per week, let's say, that's where I was my starting point, my goal. That was an effort. And I think after a month of that, I realized I was going to need to either carve out a lot of time to increase my applications or find some other way. You and I had been communicating even before I got let go from my previous role. I knew you were embarking on this AI and LLM journey. I had expressed an interest in working with you just to learn, because I had no exposure to it previously. And then just cool, you know, coincidentally, or, the way things were playing out, I sort of got in my mind that maybe I can apply this to my job search. You know, LLMs, AI, and all this. As I was learning, it seemed to me like this would be a good application.
Yeah, fantastic. And just for others to know, and John, after working together, we were talking, of course, a lot. And after I changed jobs first, we still continued to talk, which is fantastic. And John knows I'm a big believer, big proponent. I mean, compared to others, I am probably very high up there in my belief about how LLMs can supercharge your productivity, essentially. All right, so John, we talked. You you now embarked on using Chat GPT. Maybe talk a little bit, like, when you started using it. Like, what did you feel? How did you approach it initially as a new person?
It was I had never used it prior to this use case. I never had a reason to use it. I was aware of it. So I think like going in, I just wanted to see what it could do. I didn't necessarily have expectations. I think the like requirement or expectation that I did have was that I wanted the output to sound like me, to like the writing to be as close to like my tone and my style as possible. So I think going in, that was the one direction I wanted to go in, and I wasn't sure how I was going to get there necessarily, but um, that's what I was looking for. So, it was, start using it, see what it could produce. And then, um, how do I iterate or work with it to improve the output? I just wanted the cover letters coming out sounding like me. It's like I would read it and say, like, I think initially when I was using it, I was like, oh, it's good. It's like, it's a passable cover letter, but it's not really, it doesn't really embody my voice and style yet.
Is when you started using it, what did you think about the output?
I thought it was good. I think it depends on your approach as a job applicant. Like, how much value do you put in cover letters? And, I think that's debatable. Some people probably, are in the habit of using a generic cover letter and using that for every job. But that's not my style. But my approach has always been to, you know, um, really customize and tailor the cover letter, for a specific job. So I think, I think even the initial results, I thought it did a good job of, at least pulling from my experience, um, to tailor my experience to the job in the cover letter. So that part I think was pretty solid coming, initially, my first impressions. And like I said, the challenge for me was to try and then, how do I get my style and tone, into Chat GPT and then for it to also, incorporate into what it was producing.
That's interesting. Maybe talk a little bit. Maybe it's a good time to talk a bit about your process to get there, right? So we'll maybe talk about the process and then a
Yep.
little bit how you feel about the results from the new process.
Yep. So like, I think you want Chat GPT to analyze the job description. Um, and then I would also use, I'd give it my resume to then, compare to the job description. And then, um, one of the things that I was trying was feeding it writing samples, like previous like cover letters that I had written from scratch. So providing that information, to Chat GPT, but then also I think, the real, kind of secret sauces and the instructions you're giving it and the prompting, which is, beyond just analyzing the job and analyzing my resume. I would put in specific prompts about things I wanted it to highlight from my experience based on what the job description was talking about. Um, and then also was giving specific instructions to say, like, here's my sample, writing sample. Make sure, please like match that style and tone.
And what did you find the differences in output from the original? Maybe more just give it like, hey, here's my resume, write a cover letter versus the process. We'll go a little bit more in the process in a second, like go details. But what did you find like the difference in results?
I was getting much closer like to my writing style. And in terms of like, especially like the structure, the paragraphs and like the greetings and kind of like the word style, and how I write, I thought it was getting, much closer to that. Um, just from, and again, this is through iteration, but I got to this point where I had my prompts down. I knew what information to feed it. And I felt that based off of that, it was giving me good quality first drafts. Obviously I wouldn't stop at that draft. I would input some more instructions or say, oh, let's not write it this way. Let's try this and kind of go through that iterative process. Um, but like I said, once I had my steps down with the information I was feeding it and then my prompting, I felt like that initial output was pretty good.
It, there's two interesting things to highlight here, John, from what you said, just for people that are unfamiliar with LLMs or ChatGPT, the most famous one, I guess. Prompting is just a way to, usually in the chat interface, you're giving questions. A prompt is just questions with some more detail, like, hey, this poem in the style of John Feliciano, just making it
Right.
up for a second. If you knew who John was, which in this case, probably, even me, it wouldn't know me or John. Maybe it does. So or that's prompting. So I think audience knows. And I think the other thing to think about here that you brought up, some people may feel like a little bit cheating,
Yeah.
uh, but you're still putting in the work. It's like anything else. It's like asking a friend, can you
Yeah.
review my cover letter? And it's giving you sort of feedback. You're doing the work of understanding how your friend thinks, how to help your friend give better feedback. and this is what I do, all the things I work with AIs and LLMs, I'm always reviewing the work, always reviewing the output. You're always iterating. So I think there's like two extreme classes. One is give it a prompt and get the answer and set it off.
Right.
And some people do that. And that's like getting a template cover letter from the internet and just sending it off, just replacing your name and the company name. That's one side of the pendulum. The other side of the pendulum is using tools to make it as good as possible. So the company you're applying to really understands what value you're providing in the best way possible. It's just another tool, essentially.
And I think those approaches exist today without LLM and chat. Someone that's using a template cover letter
Exactly.
every job versus someone who's tailoring it to, each different job they're applying to. So, it's like Arthur said, this is just new tools. You get the most out of it when you put more effort into it. And if you're concerned about the quality, like I am, it's really important to me that it, when I'm looking at, I feel like, okay, this is something I could have written. That's key to me. I won't send it out if it doesn't embody my voice and style.
You're still putting in the effort to make
Yep.
sure it's your work, essentially.
Yep.
It's just people are new. I talk to people every week and it shouldn't surprise me, but maybe because I'm in it every day, maybe it does surprise me. I'm in my little AI LLM bubble. Everyone's using it. It's amazing to me. And a couple of the ones is just people not using it or just haven't tried it, number one. Or maybe they didn't know they tried it. And then two, just the rapid change of the technology. They just don't know the things you can do. I was just
Yeah.
talking to someone just recently about this voice mode. We'll talk about that in the process of job searching maybe later. How to use that and just interact and how good it was. And the person was going, oh, I didn't know he can do that really well. I was like, in the beginning, they try to do it was okay, but now it's really good. So I think it's it, it's an emerging field. Don't feel shy. And the nice thing about this, and John, you know this, you can ask ChatGPT, the LLM, questions. And it'll tell you, it'll try to help you if you feel shy about asking people, which you shouldn't. Why don't we go a little bit? I'm sure people are interested, like a little bit more steps. Maybe talk a little about in a descriptive way and without going down my like, okay, John, like you log into ChatGPT, initially you use the free version, you pick the paid version. Talk a little bit about how you initially used it, kind of how you iterated on it to kind of the process you have now.
Yeah. So I took your advice, Arthur. Like it's $20. So do it's worth it. And
So it's the best $20 anyone looking for a job can stack.
I can say, I was skeptical, but I trust Arthur and he's like, it's worth the investment. I did, and I don't regret it. Like I think for me, it's like having access to like all the chats that I've had, that history, being able to experiment with the different models, but also file uploads. Again, I'm mostly in the paid one. I don't know necessarily the disparities. Arthur, what would you say the biggest difference is between paid and the free version?
Generally, they add the best features initially to the highest tier and it trickles down. It's hard to keep up. For the free one, I log out of everything to get to the free version. And they're limited. Generally, you don't get the best model, number one.
Yeah.
You have limits. When I first used that, I hit my limits. Even in the $20 one, I was hitting
Right.
limits. I think those are the biggest differences.
My task and job applications, I use it every day. And my process looks like this. In one long prompt, I tell it that it's a, professional recruiter, career coach. I ask it to analyze the job description. I paste in the job description. And then I give it my instructions, and my instructions usually will involve, I've read the job description myself. I've skimmed it, analyzed it, and picked out different areas in the job description that I want to make sure are covered in the cover letter. I'll say, please make sure to highlight this part of my experience and how it applies to what they're asking for in the cover letter. Please pull from my experience in my resume, which I upload. And then after I'm done personalizing it in my prompt, I say, here's a writing sample. Please try to match the style and tone of this sample cover letter that I've written. I picked what I think is one of my best ones, one that I ended up getting hired from. So I usually pull from one of those as my writing samples. I submit it and let it's thinking, and then it produces a draft. And my advice for people is don't just stop at that draft. Make sure you read it. Because there's been times it's put it on it's generated this output. And as Arthur says, you can interact with it. And I'll say like, I don't really think this matches my tone. Please compare your draft to my sample cover letter. And it will do this, which is something you taught me, but I didn't know like inherently, like you could do this. And it says, oh, actually, it doesn't really match your style and tone. Here's a new version of that. So like, I think, the other piece, it's not like a concrete step, but like definitely make sure you iterate and go back and forth and challenge the output that it's giving you.
Yeah. Just to kind of build upon what you said there before. One is, I find most of these models are overly, in a good way, overly friendly and trying to appease you.
Yeah.
So sometimes it gives you a response with that in mind.
Right.
So sometimes it's not right because it's trying to appease you. Like it won't, it's good, but it won't like say really give you critical feedback. And this is back to what you were saying about reviewing it, seeing if it matches what you want, and then saying, wait a minute, this is not really my style. Let me give you another example. And this is the conversation bit, right? And you and I talked about, think about that. This is a very well-worn analogy. If you listen to those podcasts on LLMs and AIs, um, they're like the smartest interns that don't know anything about you.
Yeah.
They're like interns. What do you want, John? And here you go. And it's good. And you're
Right.
fantastic. And you should tell the intern, no, it's bad. And fix it. Like, I want you to fix it. It's okay.
Right.
Fix it. Right. And they're like, okay, I'll fix it. Right. So I think this iteration about asking it, hey, you gave it, to kind of recap what you did, you gave it the job description, maybe the job description, the job title, the company, your resume, um, your a sample of your style. And you said things that in your prompt a question, okay, instructions to the LLM. Hey, write this in my style based on the job description, my resume, highlight these, whatever customization you want to do, and it gives you an output. And then you can iterate because it's not going to get it right, essentially. And a lot of people say it does a really good job at your first draft.
Absolutely.
Sometimes the first draft is really good. Sometimes it's not so good, but that's okay. I think a lot of people get disappointed. What, but you can continue asking it and
Right.
instructing it to do more. Another good example you got to talk about in another context is, hey, you're a recruiter at this company I described to you. How would you respond to this cover letter?
Right.
And resume? And you can have this conversation and try to help improve the cover letter and resume that you want to submit. I don't think people should. I think a couple of turns kind of get you where you want to get because it gets to a point where it's not really you, which you don't, like to your point, you don't want. And so I think that kind of encapsulates the process that you do. Do you do a lot of these turns with the Chat GPT when you get to your drafts?
I do. I mean, I actually like that's the part I look forward to. I don't want to say it's necessarily fun, but I think you get the most value out of that back and forth and you treat it like you're interacting with someone else, like helping you draft something. I find that to be like in the past where I may have reached out to a friend or colleague to say, hey, proofread my cover letter. And then they have, they proofread it, but then they give you their feedback. And then you have that conversation like, oh, I like what you suggested. Oh, I don't like this suggestion. That's not how I would write it. Like, I'm having that same kind of approach with Chat GPT, essentially.
And by the way, what I typically like for writing things that a little long. I mean, I do this with you, John. Like I'll work with ChatGPT to do the first, second draft, and then I will share with others. I'll share with you, other people. Read this. I think it is important because you can get so narrowly focused on the task at hand with the chatbot, like you might drift away, making it sound reasonable. And it's always good to get another person to review it as well, or another chatbot. Like what I do sometimes, I give to one ChatGPT, then I might get to Google Gemini, and it's interesting because they are trained differently. You get different responses. It's kind of fascinating to look at both to help you get to the draft you want, essentially.
That is interesting. I mean, it's like you're asking more than one person to review your draft. I didn't think about it that way from a different LLM perspective, but yeah, I guess that's essentially the same thing as asking, get feedback from one colleague and say, okay, now, and I send it out to someone else and get a different perspective.
Yeah. But the maybe talk about a little bit now your productivity gains. So you've done this, you used to write for you have the numbers, rough numbers, like how many applications were you applying to? Like what's the differential or improvement essentially?
I think, prior to this process, I think my goal would have been 1 to 2 because I really would have been spending that time. Imagine take LLMs out of the picture. The old process would have been like starting from a previous cover letter that I had written. And then maybe that's my starting point. But then the work comes into tailoring that for the job that I'm applying to, sending it out, getting feedback from peers, multiple drafts. Realistically, I think 1 to 2 was a respectable goal. Now I don't actually put a number on it, Arthur. What I would say is it's no longer gating me. It's no longer a hurdle. I can get to the number I need to get to in a week. If there's 10 jobs I want to apply to, I will apply to those 10 jobs. I'll have 10, custom cover letters that look and sound like my writing. If it's more than that, it's kind of taking the limit off of what I can reach in a week for applying to jobs.
That's fantastic. It's ungating you essentially, right? To do what you want to do. What would be your this is going to be not that it's tough, but these questions can be like, you can think a little bit, or perhaps, what's your single biggest advice for people using tools like ChatGPT or job search?
I think what would I tell myself just starting out? I think
Yeah, that's a good one. It's a very good way of putting it.
start using it, right? And like, I think I would say like, you're going to improve as a user. What you're getting out of it is going to improve over time the more you use it because you're learning as you're using it. And you can experiment and change the way, like I've experimented with my prompting, like the questions I'm asking, how it's analyzing the job. The output that I'm getting is always improving. I'm getting closer and closer to, you know, output that really does sound like me the more I do it, essentially. That would be my recommendation, is just to get in there, start forming your process, and then continue to progress and iterate on it.
That's awesome. Yeah, process iteration. It's the system, right? Build a system around it.
Yeah.
So cool. John, for those listening in here, what else did you use to help you in your job search?
Initially, there's so much out there. There's lots of things to try. I would recommend just a lot of these tools, especially for resume and job applications, have free trials. I would recommend trying a bunch of different things. One of the ones that I tried is a service called Hunter, HUNTR.co. They had a free version. I just stumbled into it, but if I was to go back and recommend this to myself, it does a lot of things that you and I were just talking about, like using Chat GPT for. It's a little more passive because they try to make it easier for you, but it has a browser plugin. So, once you have an account and you're on job sites, you can save the job to your account. And then it'll set up like a job board for you. You can do different job boards. Like, so for the product owner in me, having like a Kanban board where I can see like, it's like little cards. It's kind of like Trello. So that, I think that's why I gravitated to this. But also it does, when you save a job, it'll do keyword analysis. Like, so at a quick glance, I can see, like, it highlights different things. It'll also generate cover letters. But again, like I said, it's a little more passive. Like, it asks you for your resume and you answer some questions in your account. And then on all these jobs, you can say, oh, is AI tools generate cover letter, and it does it. But again, it's like, there's no, I would say the one thing that's missing is that iterative process. Like, you can make it regenerate, but there's no place like within that job card to like give it feedback like Chat GPT. So I did use it at first, because, it was
Just,
there.
yeah,
I prefer Chat GPT with, just using that process that you and I just talked about. But otherwise, so I use Hunter. It's my job board. It tracks everything. Like, it's my system of record. I need to keep track of everything that I'm applying for. And it's a great interface visual. And it keeps everything in one place. I can even add activities to each job card. Like, if I submit an application, I can say applied. If I got a phone screen, I can say phone screen. Of course, when I get rejected, I can track all the rejection. But it's my system of record. And I think, the combination of the two, that's my go-to right now. So like Hunters for the job tracking, I use it for the keyword analysis, and then, Chat GPT for all the writing and resume optimizations, things like that.
it sounds like Hunter's like the free version would be just using I guess a Google sheet, right? But it's all manual. You can't, like a Trello board. I like that. I like visual tools as well.
Yeah.
It sounds like it's a process or system to kind of automate tracking and all your applications, where you are, just for people out there, you could use Google Sheets, but you have to do yours
Sure.
essentially.
You could, I mean, I'm not a spreadsheet. Like I said, early on, I just happened to stumble. I think if people are early in their searches and they're looking for tools, just try a bunch of different ones and see what's out there. Like I landed on this one and used the free version, but then, quickly, I think I hit the limit of how many like jobs I could track. So yeah, I did subscribe, you know, while I'm in the middle of the job, I'm definitely worth the subscription at this point. Like the Hunter and Chat GPT are like my go-tos right now.
And then how much is Hunter a month? Just out of curiosity.
Think it's not, I think it's 30. It's a little expensive. I know they do other, like I'm sure I'm not using all of it, to its fullest potential. I think they do other like job related things in the app too. I'm mainly using the job board and the job tracking. But I'm over 200 plus applications. So like I need that, like, that system of record. Especially like if anyone's involved with like unemployment, you need to have that tracking. Like I highly recommend it. But again, a spreadsheet will work as well if you need bare bones. But for me, there's like the visualization is key for me.
Yeah, I think there's some nice, there's like to your point, there's a lot of applications like this. They do the tracking, they have the AI attached to it. Find what you want. If you want to bootstrap it, you could to John's, but you could literally use the free version ChatGPT, I'm pretty sure. And maybe there's a Google sheet or Excel sheet.
Right.
The big thing is, and John knows as a product owner, is you got to have a process and stick to the process and have a system that backs up the process.
Yeah.
Right. It's nice to have a nice system, of course, a nicer system that takes more for you. Like I think Hunter does. A spreadsheet is just more work, essentially. I'm a spreadsheet jockey, so I don't. Yeah, I like systems, but I like spreadsheets. So.
Yeah.
So let's talk. You and I talked about this. I hired you as a product owner. I have some opinions about this as well. But how do you, now that you use ChatGPT in this way, and you've seen sort of the benefits, I believe. How do you see this? How these LLMs or ChatGPT will kind of intersect your day-to-day work as a product owner?
I think, yeah, I mean, from my experience of product owner, like I'm actually writing a ton. The more I get into product ownership and different hats, business analysis, things like, or whatever it is, like writing's been a key piece of that. And I think when I get to put this into practice, my next role, I think just getting that first set of eyes and even just the first draft of things, like getting started. I think for me, like trying to, if I'm new to something in my role, like the first thing I'll do is try to write it out, try to outline it, like, mind mapping, whatever it is. And I think having a tool like ChatGPT will just speed up that process. And also just having that first set of eyes to give me initial feedback. I think, in my past role at Avid, I did a lot of writing in compliments, trying to understand like new processes and things like that. And then also requirements, documents. So I think just getting that initial feedback, and it would definitely speed up my process there. And then of course, story writing, acceptance criteria, getting initial feedback. I think just scrutinizing it, having that first pass before putting it in front of the rest of the team. I think it would save time. Just pointing out things, poking holes in my user stories and acceptance criteria before I get it in front of people in a team meeting or anything like that. I think that would just speed up my process a lot.
It's interesting. Maybe a controversial question here. Does I'll chime in with my 2 cents as well. Do you think is a big fear of AI in general? Is it going to replace product owners or product managers?
I think about this. I think until I can figure out like managing the interactions between like human beings, like I think, like how does it navigate the politics and the natural conflicts in an organization? Until it can do that, I say, no, because I think a lot of the job of the product owner is kind of like smoothing over those interactions between different teams, different stakeholders, kind of being that diplomat. I don't necessarily see like an LLM accomplishing that yet. I mean, I don't know. You're the AI futurist. Are there see like the human element in those interactions? You see like Chat GPT coming in or LLMs at some point replacing.
Yeah, it's a big topic, but I would say not. I agree with that. There's a couple of facets to this. One is they're still humans, and humans like to talk to humans. And
Right.
this is why some of us like this whole shift back into the office. You want to interact, you know, be with people because you're
Right.
people, right? Some of this is sort of hard coded in our genetics, I think. That's one part. The other part that we didn't really dive into, like, what LLMs are. I had long conversations what LLMs are. LLMs is it currently looks at the corpus of the entire internet and gives you what that is. Not yet. It doesn't create these new novel ideas on the spot. Not yet. I think it gets there, but it won't create a new product, right? Because it's a prediction. Like, you ask it a question, it creates words, it predicts the next word. It kind of follows that path. The prediction computer, essentially, based on the words you say at a very simplistic level. So I think that's a big thing. Like, hey, I have this idea. I think it has a hard time doing that. Um,
Yeah.
Not that all our ideas are new or novel, but sometimes you draw, like, as humans, we kind of think about a lot of different facets, whether it's personal, business, or whatever, and we can draw it together to create this idea in a totally different context, right? And I think that's some place where currently LLMs don't do a good job. That's what you have to tell it. Hey, write this poem with this tone, with this artist or writer, author. You got to give it a lot, right?
Yeah.
You can ask it. By the way, you can ask it, give some novel ideas, but those novel ideas, again, based on sort of thinking about what's been given it in the internet. So I think we have a while. I don't see it. Will it definitely eliminate jobs? Probably. There's some
Yeah.
jobs that are like, this is. I hate using this example because I don't think it's perfect parallel, but there are sort of like there's some parallels, like spreadsheets. We had people writing into, like, journals, doing accounting, right? You had
Right.
spreadsheets, you had accounting systems. Did that get rid of all the accountants? I think probably some back office people. You created more jobs in other ways, right? So will it be exactly like that? I don't know, but definitely going to prefer it to. I definitely see that. And, again, I won't go to philosophical birth rates and do we need it, blah, blah, blah. It's a lot of things to think about here, but generally
Sure.
I agree with you. Let's keep it short here. I agree with you. I think, we're going to be around, right?
Yeah.
Now, will you need 15 jobs, Felicianos? Probably not. I think that's sort of this pressure point, right?
Right.
And then companies are trying to figure that out. Should
Yeah.
we hire more people? Should we try to use more AI? I think it's still kind of early. I really do think it's very early to figure that out. That's kind of my take on it. All right, John, this has been kind of a whirlwind here. Thanks for all of this. Let's end off with this. I want to appreciate this. I have no doubt because you have a system in place, you'll definitely, a company will be lucky to have you for sure. Let's end with this. I'll start, by the way. The question will be a favorite movie you want to see, or a favorite movie that you watched recently, or just a movie you watched recently. So I'm a horror. I like sci-fi and horror. I like movies in general, but sci-fi and horror are my favorites. I just watched recently a movie called It Follows. Very similar to a movie called Smile. Some people don't like horror movies. One of my sons does, but most don't. So it was good. I watched it last night. It was good. It was interesting. Essentially, this evil spirit kind of. I won't go into particulars. The way in Smile, the way it works, it's got a similar pattern. The ghost follows a person that started, and it passes the other person by. You have to kill yourself in front of the person. Yes, smiling essentially. But it kind of passes on. So It Follows a similar genre, but different. I won't go into the different context of how it passes it on, which is kind of interesting. So it was cool. I thought it was interesting.
I haven't seen It Watches, and I know you smile. Like I've been like trying to watch more like happy things. Although I will say there's a movie called The Watchers.
Yeah, I haven't seen that.
Dakota Fanning, and it was actually
I heard that.
pretty entertaining. Actually, I feel like talking about it gives it away.
Yeah.
But yeah, I recommend it. It's one my wife and I just picked, to sit down and watch together, and wasn't too invested in it, and then it actually hooked me pretty early. You want to find out what's going on, and yeah, it's pretty entertaining. So,
What movie have you watched recently with your kids that you all enjoyed?
Moana, of course, Moana 2, but actually one that was surprisingly entertaining. Like when my daughter was on the fence about it, was a movie called Dogman.
I saw it. Was that funny? Was that good?
I mean, I was like, I don't know where this is going. There's like characters like a policeman and his sidekick dog, and there's an accident, and they have to combine them. I'm like, where is this going? but it's actually, my kids loved it. Like, I've seen it a few times now. Yeah.
Oh, cool.
That was,
I,
tragic.
I for kids movies. I love watching the movies with kids. Once the kids like the movie, they watch it again and
Oh,
again and again and again.
again,
I never minded that. I watched Incredibles. I don't know how many different times. It was I love that, but I still watch it.
yeah, now that Moana finally made it to Disney Plus, I think it's been on like every day. Like, I know all the songs now. Like, so,
So, John, if people have to want to contact you, we're on LinkedIn. Essentially, it's your primary.
yeah, LinkedIn right now, it's like I'm on LinkedIn every day. For better or worse, but
All
I am. Yeah,
right, John. Hey, thanks a lot. This is super. I really, really appreciate it.
I appreciate it.